Hi friends, welcome to Harmony Hills Home and Garden. I'm Jenny and we garden here in Baltimore, Maryland, Zone 7. Today's project is to plant these Paperwhites and Amaryllis bulbs that I got on clearance at my local garden center. I'm planning to force the Paperwhites for cut flowers and some for decorative flowering in a decorative container. And then the Amaryllis I'm planning to try to get them to bloom this year, and then over the summer and into next fall, I'm going to see if I can't get the hang of keeping these Amaryllis alive and healthy and rebloom next year. So come with me and let's get this project underway and have some beautiful blooms in the winter. So I was doing some Christmas caroling actually with my chorus at a local garden center about a week ago, and I noticed that they had their Amaryllis bulbs on 75% off sale. So I picked some up. They're not the greatest looking shape. Like this one has started to sprout, and some of them are, this is the same way. It's got a little green sprout coming along. And actually this one is already budded up and going to flower, and it's going to flower in a strange shape, but that's okay. And this one is, well, we'll see how this one goes. So this is an Amaryllis called Apple Blossom. It's got mostly white with pink striations on it. This one is called Clown, and it's white and red. It looks almost like peppermint stripes to me. And then I have two of these, pure white with a goldish green throat, called Christmas Gift. So the Amaryllis were 75% off, so I think I got them each for $3.75 or something around that. I know they were under $4 each. That's a great deal, especially if I can get them to bloom this year and then grow their leaves and then live as a house plant or a patio plant next summer, and then bring them back in and get them to bloom again next year. I will feel like an accomplished houseplant gardener if I can get that to be done. And then while I was there, I went ahead and picked up 30 more Paperwhite bulbs. These are the Ziva variety, which is the most common variety of Paperwhites that you'll find in your local garden centers. These are, they were sold singly. I think they were 89 cents per bulb, and I got 30 of them. And my plan for these is to put some of them into a decorative container, but then others of them I'm just going to put into whatever container I can find and grow them as cut flowers so that I can have them in arrangements over the winter. Now, you may remember that back in November, right before Thanksgiving, I planted 2 Amaryllis bulbs and 3 different styles of containers of Paperwhites. And let me show you how those are doing this year. Here's the first of my Amaryllis that came into bloom. It has 2 bloom stalks. It started blooming about a week ago, and I moved it in here into the foyer. This bud opened up about a day or 2 ago, and this one and that one opened up about a week ago. And so that one clearly is done. I should pull it off. And this one is just about done. I think this is the last day. This one will look nice. But then there is another stalk coming. Now this foyer is a pretty dark area most of the time, even though it's right by the front door. That glass, the stained glass, kind of filters most of the light. So I think that this one probably won't be open for another 5 or 6 days, if I had to guess. Here's the other Amaryllis that I planted on the same day as the one we just saw. This one only had 1 bloom stalk come up on it, but it does have 4 buds. This one started to open up, I think yesterday or maybe the day before, so I just brought it downstairs. It was in the upstairs sunroom. I just recently brought this downstairs to enjoy it here in the living room. It's really interesting to me how 2 bulbs of the same variety that I bought from the same location, that I planted in the same method and I grew in the same place, have given me such different results. It's just it's just the way it goes sometimes. This one is only about a foot tall. That one's about 18 inches tall. And they have different number of blooms, different bloom times, and so on. So you just really never know what you're going to get. I'm in my south-facing sunroom here, and this is my table that normally we try to keep it clear so that we can actually use it for meals. But right now it's covered with plants that I can't find any other location for in the house due to a lack of services available because of Christmas. So my Paperwhites, here's the one that I planted in the tall clear vase, just 1 bulb. It has a beautiful bud on it, but it's not quite open yet. here's the container that I did 5 bulbs in soil and then moss on top of them. And you can see that this one is pretty much fully blooming, maybe a little bit more to come before we call it fully blooming. This one is opening up today, as is this one. This one looks like it's opening up today as well. And then the last one over there is still pretty short. It's got a ways to go. So all 5 of these came out at different times. And I keep turning the containers so that the ones that are smaller and haven't grown as much are toward the light. And then here's the container of Paperwhites that I put into this hurricane vase. Now I had this vase sitting over here on this baker's rack, kind of back right here. For most of the time, most of the 5 weeks since I planted it. But last week, so after 4 weeks over here, it wasn't growing at all. So last week I pulled it over to this side and it gets more light now. And so this one has shot up. The other 3 are still barely coming along. They will eventually come, but that's a real difference between this container and this container is that this one was sitting on this table all 5 weeks. And this one spent 4 weeks over here, kind of back in a darker corner. And so it really was a big difference in their growth rates. Okay, so that was about 5 weeks and 2 days ago that I planted those. And you can see that some of them are coming right along and others of them are not doing so hot. So I'm anticipating that these Paperwhites will be blooming in about 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks from now, depending on if I put them into a warm location or a cool location. But I think I'm going to actually take a tip from Danielle at North Lawn Flower Farm, where I'm getting so much inspiration lately, and I'm going to actually succession plant them. So I'm going to plant them in a few different containers. Some of the containers I'm going to put in a cool, dark location and make them wait for about another week or 2. And then I'll pull them out and get them growing. And in the meantime, I'll have the first ones going along. So I think I'm going to do at least 2, maybe 3 successions of Paperwhites. And that means that I'll have the ones that are blooming right now before Christmas. Then we're going to travel over the New Year holiday. When we come back from New Year's, about 5 weeks from now or so, maybe the end of January, I'll have the first succession of these blooming, and then 2 weeks later, some more, and then maybe even 2 weeks later, some more. And by then, it'll be the end of February, and it'll be time to pull my hyacinth bulbs out of the refrigerator and get them going as well. So it's really going to be a winter full of bulb forcing, and I'm excited to see how these do. Okay, so I'm going to try to put the Amaryllis into containers that are pretty to look at because they're either blooming already or getting ready to bloom pretty soon. So let me find what I'm going to use for those. Okay, I got my pots ready. I'm using 4 different kinds of pots for these. It's what I have left. In fact, I went looking in my garage for some terracotta and there isn't any left. I've got stuff in every pot that I own right now. So actually these 2 pots I had to dump out some things and make room for these Amaryllis. So we've talked before about Amaryllis bulbs, how you can just set them in a container that's filled with pebbles and then fill water down in the pebbles and then the Amaryllis will root down into that. But that's not the best method if you want to keep this plant as a house plant over the summer and then try to get it to bloom again next year. If you're going to do that, you really need to give it soil. It is a plant. It has needs for nutrition after the flowering is done. So I'm going to be using potting soil, just regular all-purpose potting soil. I have some left over from the growing season, and then I have a new bag here, and I'm going to be planting them for longevity. Now they don't need a ton of room beyond the size of their bulb size, but they do need soil if you're going to try to keep them. So I'm just going to fill each of these 4 containers up so that the Amaryllis bulbs can sit nicely and then have a little bit of soil around them. Remember, we don't want to cover more than 2/3 of the Amaryllis bulb. Pretty much the curve of it comes up and then starts to taper back in. You really don't want to go much beyond the widest point of the bulb. A little bit beyond it is fine, but certainly not all the way up to the top of the bulb. You want the top of the bulb to be showing up out of the soil. So let me just get underway with planting these 4 Amaryllis. Okay, so this bulb, again, I got it for $3, about less than $4. It's not the biggest one you've ever seen, and it is starting to kind of desiccate a little bit, dry it out. But the roots are still going and the greenery is coming. So I'm going to nestle this down, let the roots kind of grab onto that soil there. And you can see I'm trying to keep the top of the bulb just barely under the top of the container. And the top, where the green starts to show, is roughly equal with the container. And now I'm going to fill in the sides just enough to hold the bulb in place and not let it flop over once it starts to grow. Don't need that much. I want that top of that bulb to still be viewable. Okay, that's about all that needs. Now, if this grows up and the roots haven't really taken hold enough to keep the bulb stable and the stalk grows up tall and floppy, then what I can do is take some sort of bamboo stake or even a chopstick and send it down into the soil beside the bulb, not through the bulb. And then that can serve as a plant stake and, wrap some twine or something decorative around it to hold the bulb upright. Just get the soil out of this area here. Okay. And so this one is done. Super simple, super easy to do. I'm going to just keep this label with it for now so that I remember which one is which. Okay. Next, I'm going to use this container. I got this at a thrift store, and I've never seen one shaped quite like it. It's a little bit top heavy because it flares out so much and the bottom is pretty small. But I think it's very pretty. I'm going to put the other white one in here. So the two white ones are going in the two terracotta pots. That'll help me remember. Okay, so again, you can see this has started to grow. Pretty sure that when I put this in the soil and then water it in and put it in a sunny, bright window, it will start to grow straight up without too much trouble. All right, this is a cash pot. It doesn't have any drainage, so I'm going to plant it inside a container to catch any overrun. But definitely you need to have drainage available for your amaryllis because if not, they could rot really easily. So let's go ahead and put in this one that's trying to bloom already. This is the clown type that looks a little bit like peppermint. Let's see if we can do this without breaking what's already been growing. It's growing through one of the holes, see there? I tell you what, nature is resilient. Nature will always find a way. I really don't want to break that. I'm doing this project on Christmas Eve, or, Thursday of Christmas week, and it has finally decided to get chilly here in Maryland. Oh no, did I just break something? I heard something click. No, it seems to be good. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put this little guy in here. It's starting to feel a little soft. I'm a little worried about it. Put that little guy in there. It needs to be a little deeper. Anyway, I was saying it's starting to get cold here, finally. We haven't really had much cold weather, but we did have below freezing overnight last night. I think it got down in the 20s. And today, everything is cold, so my gloves were helping me stay just a smidge warm. All right, so I've got this pretty well seeded in there. The soil is holding it in place. This one I'm definitely going to need to put into a sunny window where the window is here and let this thing grow up and toward the light. If the window's here and I turn it that way, it'll just keep reaching that way. It probably, hopefully, maybe will self-correct if I put it in a bright enough direct sunlight window. And this is the last amaryllis that I have. This one has got some growth on it, but not nearly as much as that one there. Okay, normally you want to keep all the paper on, but that's just falling off. And it's got some wilting going on. I'm just going to take these off. And I'm hopeful that if I get this into soil and get it cared for, then these will perk up and live and grow. For an investment of $4 each, I'm pretty much resigned to the fact that they may not grow. And if they do grow, they may not flower. And if they do flower, they may not come back next year. But I was willing to take the risk for such a small investment. Okay, this is another example where I'm going to have to put this in the window where the window's here so that it will grow up and toward the window. Now you could certainly keep the tops of them just like this, bare soil, and that's totally fine. But I like to make them look just a little bit prettier, so I'm going to use some of this preserved moss to cover the top of my soil. You could certainly also use live moss that you harvest from your yard or from woods out behind your house or something like that. I just happen to have this bag of moss, so it's what I'm going to use. And this particular one is just the dregs of the crumbs that was in the bottom of this container, but it still looks pretty, so I'm perfectly happy to not have perfect clumps of moss. It's totally fine. Okay. And there's definitely no magic to this. You just get your stuff and stuff it in there. You could use Spanish moss if you like. You could cover the top of your soil with pebbles. Pebbles might not be the best idea for amaryllis because you don't want the soil to stay soggy. You want the soil to be moistened and then drained out. So pebbles might hold too much water, but you could use pine cones. I've done that on my other ones. Now I'm officially out of moss. I need to buy more next time I'm at the garden center or craft store. Now the final step in this process, of course, is to label the plants. Now, in the past, when I've grown amaryllis, I've not tried to save them and turn them into houseplants, but I am trying that this time. So I definitely want to label them so I can remember which is which. Now, my friend, just for Christmas recently, gave me this pack of beautiful bamboo plant labels. They are so lovely. I don't know how many are in the pack, but it's pretty chock full. There may be like 100 in there. I'm not sure. I didn't count them. And now the very last step is to water them in gently. And when you do this, one, make sure that you're not super saturating the soil. You want it to be able to be moistened, but not super wet. Also, don't get it into this area of the bulb. You don't want water to go down into the body of the bulb itself. Okay, I've placed all 4 of them on the table in my sunroom right near our southern window, and I've arranged them all so that they're bending currently away from the window, and hopefully they will bend up and grow straight up in response to having the light coming from this side. Okay, now I have 30 Ziva Paperwhite bulbs to plant and a variety of containers to put them in. I'm going to use this container, which I had been using for my aloe vera plant that I recently divided and repotted. But I think I can fit 15 of them in here, and that will be a stunning display when they're blooming. So 15 of them are going to go into here. And then the rest of my containers is really just a hodgepodge. I looked in my garage, couldn't find much to use, so I found this, which I think it doesn't have any drainage, so I don't want to just plant them straight in here, although I could fit more in if I did plant them straight in, but I need to have drainage. So I'm going to plant 1 each in each of these 3 containers here, and then I'll cover them up with, well, I was going to cover them with moss, but now I'm out of moss, so I don't know, for a while they'll just probably be naked. I don't know. I'll look and see if I have some Spanish moss somewhere. Maybe I do. Anyway, so I'll put 3 in here, and that will be kind of a nice little container. And then the rest I'm just going to plant for cutting, and so I'm just going to put them into these window boxes. They do have drainage on the bottom. I'll have to put them in a tray so that they don't, you know, spill on my furniture. But I'm just going to grow them in, the rest of them in here for cutting. So, so if I put 15 in here, 3 in here, that'll leave me 6 and 6, and I'll do these in successions. I'll do these first, and these, I guess. I don't know. I'll figure it out. And then I'll pull this one out in 2 weeks, and I'll pull this one out in 4 weeks, and then I'll have more What am I trying to say? Paperwhites in the dead of winter, which is what I'm aiming for. So, okay, so that's my plan. 6 here, 6 here, 3 here, and 15 here. Now, paperwhites, they're very difficult to get them to live and come back and grow again next season. So I'm not even going to try, so I'm not worried too much about making sure that these have proper nutrients and all of that. I do want them to have proper drainage so that they don't rot, but other than that, I'm just going to stick them in here and consider them annuals. All right, now to keep them from falling over, I am going to add just a smidge more soil around each one, just so that they stay a little bit steady in here. Same with Amaryllis. You want to plant these so that about 1/3 of the bulb is still showing, 2/3 is in the soil. Or if you're using pebbles, 2/3 are in the pebbles. Now, of course, I'm using these for my own use, but this is a great gift to give someone for Valentine's Day or for any sort of brighten your day in the middle of winter in January or February. If you plan your Paperwhite successions properly, you might be able to have gifts to give away in the middle of winter. What a nice thing that would be. Brighten someone's day in the dark, 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 cold times. I'm just going to water this in very gently. I don't have enough water here. I'll have to go get some more. Again, you don't want it to be sopping wet, you just want it to be moistened, and you don't want to get it down on the neck of the bulbs at all. Let me go get some more water. I do have a saucer for this pot. Now, oh, look, there's an extra. I've only got 14 in here. All right, let's fix that. Nothing is irreparable. Can always recover from whatever it is that is going wrong. And perfect. I am just going to repeat that process for all of the rest of these. There's nothing magic here. Okay, so I have them all planted, but I need to correct something that I said earlier in the video. Because these are already sprouting, they're already growing, I don't feel great about trying to do any cold storage on them and hold them over for succession planting. If they had come to me, if I had bought them earlier in the season and they hadn't been sprouting, then I would have been able to keep them in a dark location and they probably wouldn't have started sprouting until I pulled them out. But they have already started sprouting. I've already planted them, and actually I already watered them. So if I put them into dark cold storage right now, the water might rot the bulbs while they're waiting to come back out into the light. And so if I had kept them dry, I probably could have stored them. I'm not an expert. I don't know. It would really be an experiment for me. But honestly, I do know that if you store them wet, highly likely they'll rot. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm changing my plan. I'm going to go ahead and grow all of these on now, and I'll just have an explosion of Paperwhites whenever they happen to want to bloom, whether that's 5 or 6 weeks from now, whether they do them one stalk at a time, I don't know. We're just going to enjoy them when they come, and we'll learn from our process here. So that is all for me today. I really encourage you to go down to your local independent garden center, especially the ones that had big Christmas displays, you know, the ornaments and all of the stuff on the inside section of the garden center. If you have one of those around you, go down and see if they have any Amaryllis or Paperwhites still available. And if so, they're probably on deep discount, and you can try this too. Hey, you know what? I just remembered something that I learned from Danielle at North Lawn Flower Farm with regard to should I put those Paperwhites into cold storage or not. So I think Danielle said that if you plant them and then put them into kind of a darker than bright location, still in the heated area of your home, but maybe Danielle didn't say this. Maybe I saw this on Tracy's garden from Ontario. I don't remember where I saw this, but the information was that if you plant your bulbs, whether Amaryllis or Paperwhite, and then you put them into kind of a, not a dark location, but just not in bright sunlight, keep them away from bright light for a week or so, then they'll focus on putting down good roots, and then you can move them into the brighter location, and they'll have stronger roots and be a prettier, stronger, probably stockier, maybe not so rangy plant. So that is the latest of what I can remember. Now, if you know better than I do about Amaryllis and Paperwhites and what to do with them so that you can kind of stagger their bloom cycles, and whether to water them before they start to sprout or whether to put them in dark after they've started to sprout, if you know, please tell me. But I will share with you that I've learned a lot, clearly I haven't learned enough, from Danielle at North Lawn Flower Farm and from Tracy, who's, I forget the title of her YouTube channel, but she gardens in Ontario, Canada. I'll link both of their channels down below, and you can go to their channels and find their wonderful videos about Amaryllis and or Paperwhite growing. I'm no expert. I'm just here sharing my experiences with you all and maybe having a chat about how you're doing and what am I doing, and maybe we can share and learn from each other. So sorry, this was a bit scatterbrained, a little more than usual, but hopefully we'll all end up with the right information in the end. So thank you for joining me today. If you're celebrating Christmas, I hope that you have, actually this is coming out after Christmas, so I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. And if Christmas isn't your thing, I hope that you're enjoying peaceful time right now and a little bit of rest from the garden season. And I hope that we all head into 2022 with renewed energy and health and happiness. And I'll see you in another video real soon, friends. Bye.